Hola, ¿cómo están?
The imperfect tense.
The imperfect tense is used to describe past activities in a different way. Let's look at an example from the fotonovela.
Cuando yo tenía tu edad tampoco escuchaba a mi mamá. Generalmente ella tenía razón, pero bueno, así son los hijos.
Now let's see how the imperfect tense is formed. Repeat the imperfect forms of cantar after me. Yo cantaba. Tú cantabas. Él, ella, usted cantaba. Nosotros, nosotras cantábamos. Vosotros, vosotras cantabais. Ellos, ellas, ustedes cantaban. Now, repeat the imperfect forms of beber after me. Yo bebía. Tú bebías. Él, ella, usted bebía. Nosotros, nosotras bebíamos. Vosotros, vosotras bebíais. Ellos, ellas, ustedes bebían. Finally, repeat the imperfect forms of escribir after me. Yo escribía. Tú escribías. Él, ella, usted escribía. Nosotros, nosotras escribíamos. Vosotros, vosotras escribíais. Ellos, ellas, ustedes escribían. Atención! Note that the imperfect endings of ER and IR verbs are the same, and that all the forms of ER and IR verbs in the imperfect carry an accent on the first I of the ending. Also note that the nosotros form of AR verbs always carries an accent mark on the first A of the ending. As you can see in these examples, there are no stem changes in the imperfect. Entendíamos japonés. El camarero les servía el café. A Javier le dolía el tobillo. The imperfect form of I is había, which means there was, there were, or there used to be. Like I, había can be followed by a singular or plural noun, as these examples show. Había una doctora en la sala. Había dos hombres esperando. Atención! There are only 3 irregular verbs in the imperfect: ir, ser, and ver. Let's look at how these verbs are formed. Repeat the imperfect forms of ir after me. Yo iba. Tú ibas. Él, ella, usted iba. Nosotros, nosotras íbamos. Vosotros, vosotras ibais. Ellos, ellas, ustedes iban. Era is an imperfect form of ser. Repeat the imperfect forms of ser after me. Yo era. Tú eras. Él, ella, usted era. Nosotros, nosotras éramos. Vosotros, vosotras erais. Ellos, ellas, ustedes eran. Finally, repeat the imperfect forms of ver. Yo veía. Tú veías. Él, ella, usted veía. Nosotros, nosotras, veíamos. Vosotros, vosotras, veíais. Ellos, ellas, ustedes, veían.
Uses of the imperfect.
The imperfect is used to describe past events in a different way than the preterite. As a general rule, the imperfect is used to describe actions which are seen by the speaker as incomplete or continuing, while the preterite is used to describe actions which have been completed. The imperfect expresses what was happening at a certain time or how things used to be. The preterite, in contrast, expresses a completed action. Look at this conversation to see how they use the different tenses for different situations. ¿Qué te pasó? Me torcí el tobillo. ¿Dónde vivías de niño? Vivía en San Juan. Here are some words and expressions that are often used with the imperfect because they express habitual or repeated actions. De niño, de niña. Todos los días. Mientras. Let's go over some of the uses of the imperfect. The imperfect expresses habitual or repeated actions, as in the sentence, íbamos al parque los domingos. It also describes events or actions that were in progress, as in the example, yo leía mientras él estudiaba. Physical characteristics are also described in the imperfect. For example, when you reminisce about what your first Spanish professor looked like, you might say something like, era alto y guapo. The imperfect has three more primary uses. The first is to describe mental or emotional states, as in the sentence, quería mucho a su familia. The imperfect is also used to tell time, as in the example, eran las 3:30. Finally, the imperfect is used to state age. For example, los niños tenían 6 años. Eso era fácil, ¿verdad? Nos vemos mañana. Chao.